Thank you for tuning in today. I wanted to film this skeleton look for you, so I hope that you enjoy it and you learn something new. I'm going to be doing a lot more of my body paints and stuff now, so if you have a request for one that I've done on Instagram, just leave me it in the comments below. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy this tutorial, and if you want to see how I did this to my face, then just keep watching.
Okay, so I didn't really get this part on camera, but all I'm doing here is using a white eyeliner and just mapping out the area of the skull that I want. And then on the rest of the face, I'm just going in with my Makeup Forever Ultra HD Stick Foundation, and I am just putting that on all other areas of my face. And then just taking a NYX foundation brush and blending that in. And yeah, there's a little dance move. And so here I am just taking some white body paint. This is from Graftobian, I believe, and I'm just beginning to fill in that skull area. And I'm using kind of a flat brush so I can really get the edges nice and crisp. And then if you make a mistake, you can just go in with a bit of foundation and cover that up. But yeah, you just kind of want to make it kind of like a random, just like a cracked shape. That doesn't really make much sense, but you know what I mean. You want like some pointy kind of pieces sticking out. You get what I'm saying. You see what's going on. So just filling that in until it's completely opaque, and then I went in with a little bit of powder. And then here I am beginning to do some shading with some eyeshadow just to add a little bit of color to my skull. And these are NYX Primal colors, which are super nice for doing like really bright looks. So they're really, really pigmented and bright. And you don't have to worry about going right to the edge because we're going to be going in with some black on the edges anyway, so. And then underneath the pink, I'm just taking a little bit of yellow, just so you get that nice kind of color gradient. And I'm just kind of adding this in random areas, like around the edges. Yeah, and you can totally use whatever colors you want. I was just feeling the kind of pinky, orange, yellow color scheme, and apparently I was listening to a good song. Whatever that was, I was feeling it. Yeah, so you don't have to be too fussy about where you add this, just kind of in random areas around the edges and just to make it pop. Okay, yeah, really feeling the song. So yeah, I'm placing it down with a flat shadow brush and then taking a fluffier blending brush just to make sure that edge is nice and diffused. And I do apologize if I'm not completely in the frame. At some points during this video, it was my first time filming on a new setup that I have. I know I say that like every time I film, but I'm just trying to like perfect my setup and everything, so I'm still getting used to this one, so I apologize if that is a little bit annoying. And I'm just adding some color to the nose. I am going to be covering it up with black anyways, but I kind of want the color just to peek out from underneath. And then same with the eye, I'm just going in with pink and then adding yellow underneath. And then we are going to start to outline the cracked skull. So here I am taking some black Paradise paint from Mehron, just on a small art brush, and I'm just beginning to outline that. And the outer edge of the line we want to keep very crisp, and then the inner part of the line we want to blend that out to create the effect as if the skull is underneath our skin, so there would be a shadow cast over top of it a little bit. So I hope that made sense, but you can see what I'm doing. And I love using a lot of brushes from like the craft store for body painting because they have a really, really tiny brushes that you usually can't, and you usually can't find makeup brushes that are that tiny, and they're really cheap too, so I definitely recommend picking some of those up. And then in the parts where, how do I say this? I'm like the worst at explaining things sometimes. The parts where the cracks kind of come to an end in kind of that triangle shape, you want to fill those with black because it would be completely black if it were a real cracked skull. So you want to, yeah, you just want to make it look like there's a shadow underneath. I feel like I cannot explain anything today, but I hope I'm making sense. So yeah, I'm just going to do the same thing all the way around. And then you can take some concealer again to clean up the edges. And if you notice I'm looking to the right a lot, that's because I'm making sure I'm in frame, which apparently a lot of the time I'm not, so I need to work on that. So yeah, just placing the black shadow down with a small brush and then going in with a bit of a bigger, fluffier brush just to kind of diffuse that edge. And you don't want the lines to be perfectly straight. You want to kind of make them kind of jaggedy like they would be if it was real cracks. You know what I mean? And then here I am just adding my little skeleton nose. Just painting that on with the same black Paradise paint and same brush. So I'm just going to leave the nose completely black for now, but then later on I'm going to go and add a little bit of a white highlight to it. And then I'm just adding a few little more lines coming off of that just for a little bit more detail. And then here I am just darkening up the eye socket. I'm just using the same black paint. And I wanted the eye socket to be kind of more diffused. I didn't want a harsh line. So I'm just going to place down the paint and then blend it out with another brush. And same with underneath. So then we'll be left with the color kind of peeking out from underneath the black. And just make sure to set the paint on the lid with a black eyeshadow or it will definitely crease. And then for this part, just to add a little bit more color and some different kind of texture, I am taking some hot pink Paradise paint and really watering it down, and then pressing the brush down where I want the tear to be, and then just letting the paint run down the face. And then wherever I want the tear to stop, I just dab it with the end of the brush. I love adding like tears to makeup. I think it adds a really cool effect, and I do this all the time. So yeah, and then just kind of tilting my face so it runs down, and then dabbing the end of the tear so it stops. And then here I am just adding the cracked pieces around the skull. It's a good idea to look at a reference photo for this part. I didn't, and I feel like this part could have came out a little bit better than it did, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. So you just want to kind of add some random shaped pieces around. As if our skin is cracking off. And again, using the same paint on the same brush. And I'm just doing this in a few areas of the skull. I'm mainly sticking to the right side of the face for this. And then adding a few lines coming off. So here I'm just adding the kind of bigger pieces, and then I'm going to go in and add some smaller ones around those. And yeah, going in with some smaller ones. So just make sure they're all different shapes. You don't want it to look uniformed or anything like that. And then once I'm satisfied with that, I'm just going to go in with some white Paradise paint, and I'm going to begin to highlight those areas. So yeah, I'm just filling each one in with some white paint, and then after that we're going to shade them. And I'm just making sure to use a really, really tiny brush for the tiny parts, obviously. And then once those are all filled in with white, I'm going to be taking some black eyeshadow, and then I'm going to begin to start shading them. So you just want to make sure you figure out where the shadow would be cast. So in this case, the ones at the top would have a shadow over the tops of the pieces. And so yeah, you want to make sure you shade each piece, because it's really going to give it a nice effect. And again, I'm really sorry that some parts are hard to see, but I promise I'm going to get better. And I apologize how hard this part is to see again, but I am just adding the teeth. So all I'm doing is going in with the same brush and the same paint, and I'm just adding those teeth shapes. So bigger in the middle and then smaller as they taper off to the sides. There's a lot of different ways that I like to do skull teeth, but for this look I just stuck to like the basic, simple way to do it. And then after I have my teeth all drawn out, I'm just going to begin to draw little thin lines up from between each tooth. And I want them a bit longer in the middle and then shorter on the sides. You'll be able to see this part better in a little bit. And then once I'm finished with the lines, I'm just going to begin to start shading the teeth just at the ends of them. So I'm just going along with a little brush and adding just a little bit of black shadow, and I'm doing that to the bottom and the top teeth. And here's the finished look. I didn't film the painting part on my chest and neck, but if you would like to see how I do that, I can totally film that in my next tutorial.